Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. Lolita, the tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap it 3 on the teeth. Lolita.
Filmmakers claim it's their job to tackle thorny issues, but critics say the latest film version of the classic novel Lolita glamorizes child abuse.
The movie about this at a time when the Belgian police are still trying to find bodies of young girls.
A kind of paedophile climate.
She's just read Lolita, and as far as she's concerned, it's just like reading an apology from a child abuser.
What is this paedophile climate that you speak about?
To explain why it is its own school reading list.
There is the law. There is the law.
Having sex naked.
Gentlemen, we don't even know if we're ever going to see this film. Thank you both very much indeed.
Society increasingly sensitive to the subject of child abuse, it was inevitable that Adrian Lyne, the director of 9½ Weeks and Fatal Attraction, would run into trouble with his new film, Lolita. Lolita herself is no stranger to controversy, and the arguments over on the page or on the screen have raged for more than 40 years. Completed in December 1953, Vladimir Nabokov's novel has alarmed, charmed, angered, or discomforted generations of readers, publishers, and most recently, film distributors.
When I first started preparing the movie, and casting and looking for locations and this sort of thing was 4 or 5 years ago. Nobody really was talking about pedophilia. I mean, you weren't reading about it day after day in the newspapers. You weren't seeing it on television. There wasn't the hideous problems in Belgium. There seemed to all of a sudden be an obsession with pedophilia. I think that this movie would have come out without any problem in the 80s, without any problem in the 70s. I think in America now, it would be very difficult for Scorsese to make Taxi Driver. Impossible, I would think. Maybe it was, in one sense, not the right time to be making this movie, but maybe in another sense, it's exactly the right time. I think it is in the end.
Something happened on this film that should never happen to a dog, which is that dogs don't make films, but which is that we had a lawyer in the editing room. And probably if there were more lawyers in the editing rooms, dogs would be making films because directors would all resign. Apparently in some dark corners of the internet, children's faces were being, by dint of computer magic, imposed on adult bodies. And so a law was rammed through that was very ambiguously worded, a very bad piece of legislation, in fact, and probably in the end unconstitutional.
People who are involved in that area, in the area of trying to protect our children from pedophiles, will be very nervous if they read in the paper that a film about an underage relationship is being made. They'll be very nervous and they'll want to publicize their cause and publicize the situation. And yet I would say to them, before you judge, go see the work.
I'm sleepy today.
Me too.
You've been having trouble sleeping?
I can't imagine.
The idea that I can't make this movie, that I can't touch this subject because it's contentious, because it makes people uncomfortable, because, you know, I should sweep it under the carpet, that's got to be wrong, hasn't it?
Am I getting a zit?
What?
Do you see a pimple on my chin?
Look absolutely perfect to me.
Want to see my chin wobble?
Okay.
even if you disagree about this movie, and of course everybody will disagree about it, they disagreed about the novel, but at least they'll be arguing, at least they'll be discussing, at least they'll be airing a problem.
The film, I feel, sort of tries to have it both ways by giving you this complete straightforward, Lolita's gorgeous babe, we all want to do it to her, and we share his desire for her, and then we can all feel guilty with him at the end. And somehow the whole thing is made safe, it's tied up neatly, and it's resolved. The importance of the story, its mythic status, is precisely about its transgressiveness. It's not about it's really okay to want to sleep with 12-year-olds. That is not what the book is about.
Writing in an adopted language, Russian émigré Nabokov was already in his mid-50s when he wrote Lolita. The novel tells the story of Humbert Humbert, a middle-aged academic who marries a widow to gain access to her 12-year-old daughter. Taking advantage of her mother's accidental death, Humbert drives Lolita on a journey across America, during which they become lovers. The relationship slides towards disaster. Humbert loses Lolita, and the story ends in tragedy. The novel was written over a 5-year period and took shape during cross-country butterfly hunting trips undertaken by Nabokov and his family. These journeys yielded the raw material for the novel's affectionate satire of roadside America. American publishers fought shy of the book and were further worried by Nabokov's insistence upon anonymity. In despondent mood, Nabokov shipped the ailing Lolita to Paris, hoping that she would benefit from a change in climate.
The French have historically been much more relaxed about questions of sexuality. In French literature, there's a great precedent, which is the Marquis de Sade. In this country, in America, the Marquis de Sade is the man who gave his name to the most violent of sexual perversions. He is that too in France, of course, for many people, but he's also, especially for the French chattering classes, he's a great writer. I think it's also a question of French society. For example, homosexuality has been legal in France since the early 19th century. It's in the Napoleonic Code. The French women's movement in the 70s were very, very close to the women's movements in Britain, in America. But the one thing which I think distinguished them is that they were extremely relaxed about pornography, about prostitution. And therefore I think that's why, when Nabokov discovered that American publishers were very uneasy, very nervous about publishing Lolita, even from a writer with a reputation like his at that time, that's why he would automatically turn to France. I think they accept that it's absurd that when a young girl turns 16, or whatever age of consent would be, she's suddenly allowed to be attractive and sexy, and you can say what you like about her. But the day before, of course, she was just a little girl.
In 1955, Nabokov's Paris agent found an English-language publisher, the Olympia Press, an oddball operation headed by the colourful Maurice Girodias, who usually paid his authors by the word.
Girodias was very clever. He had this wonderful idea of publishing pornographic books in the same series as literature. All of these books came out with a green cover, Traveller's Companion series, and so people who were looking for smut might go along to a shop and find books with titles like Story of O, or With Open Mouth, or On Bended Knees, or I've Got a Whip in My Valise. And so we have here this charming item, Bottoms Up. The title's obviously, explains the book. And here we have another one, Busy Bodies, which I understand is a tale of fornication with ghosts. And all these books came out in the same format as Lolita by Nabokov.
The market for the books was American soldiers stationed in Europe at the time, English schoolboys, I'm sorry to say, English masters too, actually, schoolmasters as well. They were funny books, actually. A lot of them were quite funny. But they were, at the time, they were banned everywhere, of course, except in France.
But the point was that the seekers after smut would go into Paris bookstores, buy 4 or 5 books, then get home, and what do they have in their hand but a book by Nabokov or Henry Miller or Samuel Beckett? It's very clear that pornography was in fact paying for the literature.
Lolita being published by Olympia Press seems to me a very strange story, because Nabokov made it impossible himself for publication to take place in America, because his condition for publication also was that he wanted a pseudonym. He did not want to come out clearly as Nabokov.
As for Girodias, he said that father was afraid for his job and for the livelihood of his family at Cornell, and therefore wanted to write under a pseudonym, which was utterly untrue. I think his only consideration was not to embarrass Cornell, not to embarrass those at Cornell who were not literate and sensitive enough to understand that there was nothing dirty about the book, to keep Cornell out of any controversy, because he loved Cornell as much as Cornell loved him.
Did Nabokov know about the Olympia Press and its porn? He may well have experienced some embarrassment over the company in which he found himself and the novel that he termed his best book.
He did not know. I think Girodias boasted to him about having published certain authors who are semi-respectable. He didn't really know to what depth some of Olympia's texts descended.
Nabokov was an immensely intelligent man. He spoke several languages. He was very well versed with European literature. He knew all about publishers. He knew all about publishers' contracts. He knew all about copyright laws. And he knew, therefore, that any man producing paperbacks in the English language in Paris, which could only be published in Paris and not in Britain or the United States of America, could only be pornographic books.
As pornography, Lolita was a flop. Loyal Olympia readers warned Girodias that he was giving himself a bad name. As literature, Lolita was hardly faring better, until Graham Greene nominated it in the Sunday Times as one of the best 3 books of the year. Already notorious for his outspoken admiration of Shirley Temple, Greene swiftly engaged in vigorous debate with the outraged John Gordon, editor of the Sunday Express.
John Gordon was also known as Mr. Clean. He'd cleaned up the square mile of vice in Soho or something like that. And also, it seems to me, but perhaps my memory's playing games,
keep it a secret.
He had formed the Shirley Temple Society because he was very keen on Shirley Temple, which was very interesting.
What has Shirley got to say?
Oh, I can hardly wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So there was a conflict between Graham Greene and John Gordon, which was absolutely hilarious, actually, to us. We sat there just shrieking with laughter and expecting, the result, which didn't waste much time in coming, because Lolita took off.
I thought it was a perfect book, so intense, so intelligent, so bright, and so finely, beautifully written. If you compared Lolita to some of the books that Olympia Press had published, Lolita seemed sedate and much too literary and not at all erotic, not in the normal sense of the word. And in any case, not pornographic at all, at all, at all.
When Girodias signed the contract, it was all English language rights. All English language rights, but no cinema. What he didn't realize at the time was that it could make a film. He didn't think that the subject as scabrous as Lolita could possibly make a film. It would be unthinkable to make a film with a real Lolita.
Darling, come and walk over his legs.
There are countless questions that would come up, as you might imagine, in adapting what would be by any standard a difficult novel to adapt. Everyone sort of turned to me and said, could you make it contemporary? Because it'll sure save a lot of money and maybe enhance its commercial appeal. And I said, I think that's a ridiculous idea. I don't think this story, which takes place in the book in 1947 and the years after, could possibly happen today. Today she'd be warned about pedophiles. From the first day she attended school, her mother would be sniffing around like crazy. Would be, everyone on the street who saw them together would have dark suspicions.
Child! Louise, maybe tenderloin.
That'd be good.
I was kind of stimulated to go forward with it. And I wrote the screenplay, and I sent it in. And on my answering machine, Adrian Lyne said, "Well, Stephen, well, well, well."
Does it annoy you to be the Lolita man?
No, I wouldn't say that, because Lolita is a very special favorite of mine. It was my most difficult book. I was surprised that the book was published at all.
In Britain and the USA, two important changes in the law fostered a more favourable climate for the publication of Lolita. In Britain, the Obscene Publications Act allowed expert testimony for works of literature. And in the USA, a Supreme Court decision granted books of literary importance protection under the First Amendment. Even before Lolita's eventual American publication in August 1958, Stanley Kubrick and his producer partner, James B. Harris, were negotiating for the film rights.
Remembering back, we may have been broken the binding on the book and passed the pages back and forth so that we could read the book actually at the same time. Stanley and I were determined to acquire it, in spite of all the warnings and all of the pundits of the business who said, "You'll never get this picture made." They actually used that line in the sales campaign of the picture, saying, "How did they ever make a film of Lolita?" Of course, we were holding ourselves wide open for criticism because I believe the New York Times says they didn't.
Lolita!
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 I first met Nabokov at a book and authors lunch at the Waldorf Astoria in New York. The person who introduced me said, "Nabokov, this is James Harris. He just bought your book." And he said, "Oh, how nice. I hope you enjoy reading it." He didn't realize that I was the one that had bought the film rights to his book. In the ads, it referred to the picture as James B. Harris and Stanley Kubrick's possessive, apostrophe S, Lolita. This may seem outrageous to some people because they say it's Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita, but the book is his Lolita. The movie was ours. I never could figure out what one thing had to do with the other, because the book is the book. It is a masterpiece, and no one has ever changed it. We certainly, as filmmakers, aren't going to change the book. But on the other hand, we have no allegiance to the book. We have allegiance to our film.
My father, when he saw the film, said, "It makes me feel like a patient traveling supine in an ambulance, watching the landscape go by and powerless to change it."
We just thought that it should be treated in a light, frothy, and fun-like situation. Hence, Peter Sellers being cast in the part of Claire Quilty. We had like a terrific time letting him improvise and doing a lot of things.
I noticed when he was checking in, you had a lovely, pretty little girl with you. She was really lovely. As a matter of fact, she wasn't so little, come to think of it. She was fairly tall, little. Well, I mean, taller than little, you know what I mean? But she was really lovely. I wish I had a lovely, pretty, tall, lovely little girl like that. I mean...
Well, that was my daughter.
Your daughter? Gee, isn't it great to have a lovely, tall, pretty, little, small daughter like that? It's really wonderful.
The lovely, tall, pretty little small girl was played by the 15-year-old Sue Lyon. Although this helped to diffuse the censorship problems, the novel's 12-year-old nymphette had become a teenager of the 50s.
At that time in cinema, you did, in terms of body shape,
you had Grace Kelly and Audrey Hepburn, or Marilyn Monroe and Sophia Loren. And Sue Lyon as Lolita is basically Audrey Hepburn done as Marilyn Monroe. It's a very weird, freakish hybrid.
We were careful enough not to make her childlike. I mean, Sue Lyon was an extremely attractive and mature girl. True, she was only 14 when we did the film, but I don't think anyone sitting in the theater would think that you were a disgusting old man if you found her sexually attractive. And that when you say how knowing was she, I would say completely knowing. I'd have to agree she probably looked a bit older than her years.
Sue Lyon, who was actually the same age as Dominique Swain when the filming was done, but did tend to look like a 22-year-old porn actress, was, I thought, quite inappropriate. I mean, it made for a different kind of film. Our version takes place before the invention of the Great American Teenager, as Nabokov's version did. The Great American Teenager is sort of invented when, rather belatedly, American marketers come to see that they have their own tastes, their own styles, and their own disposable income. Kubrick's version, by contrast, takes place with a very powerful awareness of all that culture.
There's nothing worse than a dope who tries to look old or sophisticated. So all the makeup we use is just powder and lipstick. But we're fussy about lipstick.
Those who will see Adrian Lyne's film will have a more accurate idea, because Dominique Swain is much more that magical mix of girl and woman that was intended.
The body of Sue Lyon and the body of Dominique Swain is not the body of Lolita in the novel. She is much, much, much younger in the novel. And so in a way, both of these films are really a travesty of this book, simply because they make this girl so much more like your average sexy teenager.
I'm trying to drive. It was kind of nuts using her, really. It was insane, really. I mean, this is somebody who had done nothing, absolutely nothing at all, and the idea of doing a $50 million movie with a total amateur was kind of crazy. Lipstick on. More than that? The thing about Dominique was she was in touch with her childhood. And by the end of the movie, ironically, I would never have been able to use her again. I couldn't have started again with her because she'd grown too old in the 6 months of the movie.
He's coming right now. Okay, what we do? Ah! Lipstick on. No! Shield, lead the car there and come bad. She's bad.
She's bad.
I'm going to give her this to mark the math with. Be good. Come on. Let's do it. Albert, help.
She had a foot in childhood and a foot in adulthood, exactly.
It's very interesting. I mean, yes, she flirted like any 15-year-old would flirt on camera. And I was stuck in that strange position of, rather like Humbert, of not allowing myself to enjoy it.
I hurt inside. Well, what'd you expect? I was a daisy fresh girl, and look what you've done to me. I should call the police and tell them that you raped me, you dirty old man.
We sent her to a psychiatrist who felt that she could deal with it. When we were shooting, the mother was always there.
Good one.
The teacher was always there on set.
Joan, I'm so ashamed. Oh, it's weak. It's hardly there.
I think she was very embarrassed about the way she had to be treated like this porcelain doll. You know, she's Californian, she's 14, you know, they know everything. And I think would have been more comfortable, as I would have been, had we been able to treat her as an adult, but for legal reasons we weren't.
I guess I'm gonna have to show you everything.
To prevent any kind of contact between them, we had a thing that we called the pad that would come on his lap or her lap or whatever. So we were very careful.
So let's come over here and
can I read it?
My fear for Dominique Swain is that this film, which is unloved, unliked, hasn't been a success, is going to kill a career that really seems to me to hold out a lot of promise.
The promise held out by Sue Lyon's performance as Lolita was sadly short-lived. The firestorm of publicity over her role disrupted her career and damaged her life.
She didn't like the notoriety. We were constantly just running away from paparazzi and running away from everybody because it was an unpleasant experience for her. She got out of the business a lot faster than one would think with the start that she had.
And now, Sue Lyon and James Mason, the capable young actress who was 14 when she received the nod to play the title role in Lolita, shares the plaudits of the critics and movie fans with Mr. Mason.
Even with Sue Lyon, who was very good, she's this bubbly, blonde, chirpy girl who sucks on her soda pop and stuff. I always like kind of Lolita revenge films. And the most brilliant actress in America today is probably Natalie Portman in Leon, where I think she was 12.
Leon, I think I'm kind of falling in love with you. It's the first time for me,
How do you know it's love if you've never been in love before?
Because I feel it.
Where?
In my stomach. It's all warm. I always had a nut there. And now, it's gone.
Later we will.
What I really like about Leon is it's not about her wanting to sleep with him. It's about her wanting him to acknowledge that she can have feelings that strong. In Christina Ricci and Natalie Portman, you have like these tortured poets as 12-year-old girls. You look at her face and it seems to be saying, I want the roots of your soul. Not, like, hey, please, Daddy, play with me.
This seemed to be the provocative message from the 24-year-old Carol Baker, who ignited a blaze of publicity as Baby Doll.
Baby Doll was certainly one of the forerunners of that kind of an image. I can't remember an image before then where you had that child woman. People used to yell at me across the street, "Oh, come on, Baby Doll, suck your thumb." I immediately dyed my hair dark. I wore no makeup. I wore nothing that looked like Baby Doll pajamas or Baby Doll dresses or Baby Doll anything else. No, it was horrendous. It was a horrendous thing as a first experience.
Archie Lee, you're a mess. Do you know what they call such people? Peeping-toms.
We didn't have then what we have today about, oh, we must protect our children and maybe this is doing something terrible and maybe... we didn't even know much about pedophiles then, Kazan went into shock that it got this much attention and was banned. And Dean Pike, who was a Protestant minister in New York, came out and said, well, I think Cecil B. DeMille's 10 Commandments is more immoral than Baby Doll. So then Cecil B. DeMille shot back. And I was passing a church in New York, and they always have a board saying what the sermon is going to be that week. And it was Baby Doll versus the 10 Commandments.
Kubrick's Lolita emerged virtually unscathed from the British Board of Film Censors. But in the USA, producer James B. Harris had to tangle with the studio's own production code, as well as the Legion of Decency.
Well, what should we do now?
Or do you ring down and order breakfast?
No, I don't want to do that.
Well, what do you want to do?
Why don't we play a game?
They were sensitive here about the scene in the hotel room.
You mean you never played that game when you were a kid?
No.
All righty, then.
She then drops down out of frame. Well, the fact that she was sort of at the middle of the cot, she will be dropping down on the midsection of Humbert's body, which I suppose implies in the minds of the censors oral sex. So it was just a question of cutting out a little faster. However, when the picture was then screened for the Legion of Decency, we were condemned. Monsignor Little, who was in charge of their censorship program, condemned the picture along with La Dolce Vita. I mean, we were in very good company, Fellini and Kubrick. I mean, how could you do better? And so it remained condemned for about 6 months. We'd gain a little ground each time, a little cut here and a little change there. The biggest change was we had a sequence where Humbert had to perform his husbandly duties, and it was interpreted by Monsignor Little that he was using the picture of Lolita
Oh, you man.
as a source of stimulation in order for him to complete the sex act. And he said that's out of the question. You can't do that. But, I mean, I know exactly what he meant, and I know that he was right, and that, you argue your case as well as you can, and you settle.
Darling, you've gone away.
So it was settled that if we took out a few cutaways of Humbert looking at the picture, that he would say it's okay.
James Mason is pretty much dyed-in-the-wool hateful.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
This is just a hateful man. This is a rat of a man, a disgusting human being. But the novel was so much more than that.
I love the original film. I just love it. I think it's sort of dark and twisted and winding and wonderful. And the new one, I think, is, in a funny way, very reflective of the time we live in. It's very literal. It's very truthful to the novel. It's very sort of factual. It's not an act of the imagination, and maybe that's exactly it, that the Kubrick, for me, really is an act of the imagination, whereas the novel really was an act of the imagination. And this one seems to be, as much as possible, removing that element of it and saying, let's just represent this as faithfully as we can, and that will make it literary, and that will make it a good film, which actually, to me, also makes it a much less dangerous film.
Kubrick had chosen to shoot in black and white, not because color wasn't available, obviously, but because he saw it as a black and white film. He made his characters black and white. He made Humbert black, for example.
Your feelings for Humbert are kind of ambiguous. I mean, you loathe this man for what he's doing, and yet you are amused by him. And yet you feel sorry for this hateful man sometimes. And yet, at the end of the film, you understand that he loved her.
She was only the dead leaf echo of the nymphette from long ago. But I loved her, this Lolita, pale and polluted and big with another man's child. She could fade and wither, I didn't care. I would still go mad with tenderness at the mere sight of her face.
I don't believe that people who behave badly are necessarily nasty people. I think nice people do terrible things. People who we could like at dinner do terrible things. And I think that's what's interesting about behavior, about humanity. Adrian and I both talked about this beforehand, how we must keep the audience with Humbert.
Get back in the boat with Charlie, and that's that.
I don't think we ever believed it was what we should do was to make him excusable. I think wrong is never excusable.
When the people who made this film say, well, surely it's okay because we showed how sad he was at the end, you sort of think, well, maybe not, actually. Maybe that inclusion of his guilt is simply an enabling device to allow us, the audience, to partake in this forbidden fruit.
I think you're appalled by what you read, obviously. I mean, but the advantage that you have, of course, with a novel over a film is that you can put it down, and then you pick it up and you kind of move on, having sort of forgotten about what you just read, if you like, and then he makes you laugh again, and then you kind of pick up the thread, if you like. Now, with a movie, that's totally different because the thing happens consecutively, obviously. So there were scenes that worked in the novel that didn't work in the movie, and I took them out because it would have killed his character stone dead way before the end of the movie.
I think he's tried to make us feel with Humbert Humbert and come out of the movie theater saying, what a sad story. What a beautiful girl.
You know, I loathe popular pulp. I loathe go-go gangs. I loathe jungle music. I loathe science fiction with its girls and goons, suspense and suspensories. I especially loathe vulgar movies, cripples raping nuns under tables, or naked girl breasts squeezing against the tan torsos of repulsive young males.
Although Lolita was given a certificate in the USA last year, the film did not find a theatrical distributor and has now been acquired by the cable station Showtime. So why did French producers Pathé run foul of Hollywood?
Any decent script with an A-list director that it gets into the hands of a foreign distributor has already made the rounds of all the U.S. studios. So by definition, the U.S. studios have said they don't want to make this movie. So then it takes a certain kind of hubris to then go out and say, well, we're going to put up the money for this movie, we're going to make it, and then we're going to hope that we can make it so good that the U.S. studios are going to buy it.
I was told by three heads of studio that they wanted the movie. And then suddenly, these people kind of faded away. I mean, it was extraordinary, really. And I understood that corporate decisions were being taken not to get involved in this subject matter, not to touch this. I've heard it many, many times.
It's entirely about the Hollywood executive capitulating to the moral majority that are basically out there in favor of censorship, which to make clear, I'm not, who are basically saying, this is a film that never should have been made, this is a topic that must not be discussed, we cannot look at this because this is evil, we put it in that box, we want to close the box and lock it, we don't want to ever go there.
Pedophilia is such a primal taboo, and I certainly agree that that's one of the things that has mitigated against this film's distribution. I'd have to feel so completely convinced that I love this movie and I respected it for what it was, that I would just have to accept the heat that would come from the potential controversy. We did not love the film that much to ignore the grief that would come from the controversy.
I think there is a reluctance in Hollywood to tackle difficult subjects, but I think you have to tease that apart from any kind of moral rectitude. Whereas a movie that has like a hot gay sex scene in it, you know you're going to alienate a lot of your audience, but you also know that you can probably sell that in some ways to a certain portion of the audience, and that makes it a niche, marketing hook. Whereas, this, you just can't go anywhere near selling, this as being, sexy or steamy. So you've kind of created like a $50 or $60 million art house picture.
Nobody wants to stand up and be counted now. Nobody wants to be perceived as, or potentially perceived as being the studio or the company who supports pedophilia.
I'm very much in favor of freedom of speech. I'm on the board of the American Civil Liberties Union in California, and I believe in all these things. But we're in a business to market entertainment to people.
Standards of acceptable entertainment and imagery shift according to era, and many of these advertising images, innocuous at the time, might now be viewed with a jaundiced eye. In the fine arts, painters and photographers have not been afraid to confront the sexuality of their young subjects in ways which may well unsettle the viewer. This was precisely the strategy adopted by Adrian Lyne.
Somebody said something very interesting. Before I shot, I think, they said, are you going to make the sex erotic? Which was a great question, really. And I thought endlessly about it, but then decided that it had to be, because it's Humbert's story. It's written in the first person, and so we should see this girl, Lolita, through his eyes. We should see her as he does.
The sex scenes very unsexy because they were so cliched. The moral dimension of the novel is about both enjoying the sexuality and at the same time feeling the dismay and disgust that you do when you realize how powerless any 12-year-old child is when she is alone at the mercy of a perverted 40-year-old man who, wants to fuck her.
It touches upon the latent attraction most adults have for adolescents. Adolescents are very beautiful. I mean, my son went through a period from about 10 to 15 when he was just like an angel.
Maybe we should have cast someone as Lolita who was physically repulsive so that no one would ever get the idea that children are attractive.
This is very much something we're very disturbed about in ourselves, perhaps, because of the current climate. But I believe it's a truth. I mean, Richard II, when he married his French wife, he married her at 9, and the proviso in the wedding agreement was that he shouldn't have her till she was 12. That was a different time, a different society. Human beings don't change. Acceptable legal age limits do.
Dominic Swain is presented in the film exactly as she would be presented if she were 19 or 25. I think there are very, very few concessions to the idea that this person is supposed to be on some level a child.
Kubrick distanced himself from the relationship. He created a Lolita out of a few props, the lollipop, the famous heart-shaped sunglasses. He never let his camera fancy Lolita. As we say, the camera loved an actress. Lyne's camera definitely fancies Lolita, films her as an object of desire. And of course, that's what's perhaps shocking about the film, or will shock some people.
I think the film is very much on Humbert's side. I think it seemed to be his tragedy rather than hers. It would almost be interesting to see a contemporary version, which is supposedly unshootable, using a 9-year-old dressed a la Baby Spice. That would show really just how heavy this proposal is of this relationship between this man in his 40s and this very, very young body.
Lolita just became a word to symbolize a younger girl, older guy relationship. Then you have Agnes B with a range of clothes called Lolita. This is a book about a girl who was molested and abused and who died at 17 in childbirth. Yes, I'd like to wear those clothes. That's really appealing. Thanks. And then you have Baby Spice, who's 22, dressing as a 10-year-old, and you have 5-year-olds dressing as a 10-year-old because of Baby Spice, which is very weird. And you see pictures of Mariah Carey, who's 28, sucking lollipops in nightclubs. I see those women as collaborators. It really bothers me a lot. See, my problem with Lolita is not that men are going to go out and think, oh, it's a really good idea to sleep with young girls. It's that women are going to think it's a really good idea to infantilize yourself.
Some rather cute dolls, I'll show them to you afterwards, were made, Lolita dolls. I have 3 standing there. And a very civil bathing suit firm in France sent us sketches of what they intended to produce, Lolita bikinis. But the name Lolita is not protected by copyright. Peripheral prostitutes in Naples and Rome calling themselves Lolita are not subject to legal action. Neither are models and actresses. Neither are dress styles. I've catalogued as much as I could how the word has evolved, been misused, been abused, and it'll make a nice little book sometime.
It's Ferdinand Mount in the Sunday Times here who said that the novel doesn't deserve the reputation it has because we know a lot more now about the psychology of the child molester. And the child molester is not this rather suave, glamorous figure exemplified by Humbert Humbert. And therefore the novel has at its center a bogus psychology. I just can't believe the kind of obtuseness of this approach, because it suggests that Nabokov was writing a work of sociology. Nabokov was writing a novel with an extremely highly wrought style that in fact would probably put off the sort of person who's looking to that novel for just salacious gratification.
I had no sympathy whatsoever for Humbert Humbert at all. I had aversion for the relationship, but complete acceptance of the novel. No matter what the literary merit of Lolita is, which is great, tremendous, it is pure pedophilia.
If Nabokov's modern classic is now under renewed attack from the critics, what chance did novelist A.M. Holmes have when she wrote The End of Alice, which, like Lolita, is another tale told by an imprisoned paedophile and killer?
The End of Alice really is a tip of the hat to Lolita in a lot of ways, and also goes further. People would say, I can't publish this book, or we're afraid to publish this book. And in a couple cases I went in and I was asked to go in to talk to publishing companies who seemed to want to check and see that I was sane and that, you know, the book was in fact a work of fiction, which seems to be an anomaly these days. And it became clear the book was going to have a hard time getting published. In England, somebody said to me, how would I feel if my book was found in the home of somebody who'd murdered a child? And, you know, my first response was, well, I would feel quite badly. And then 2 days later, I thought of really what I think is the right answer, which is, well, what if I made steak knives and one of them was used to murder a child?
There have been no documented cases of viewers of Lolita running out and committing acts of child abuse, which is what American distributors rather hypocritically claim they fear. A pedophile who wants to watch a dirty movie can see far worse things than that by going down to his corner porn store.
I'm not used to having to justify the work I do. I'm an actor. I'm employed to play roles. When I'm asked to play Richard III, I don't expect to have to justify playing somebody who seduces the wife of the person he's just murdered. Difficult behavior. But I don't expect to have to justify that behavior, and I'm sorry that I have to justify so much and have been, in some quarters, criticized for taking on a role such as Humbert Humbert.
In the novel, there are these wonderful moments when Humbert takes time out to say, of course, it's very difficult for me to have to tell you this, but I need to remind the reader now that I'm actually a very, very attractive man. I'm actually look like a movie star. And you laugh uproariously because, of course, he's telling you this, there's no reality testing. Because, of course, Jeremy Irons is a very attractive man. And, you know, probably many 14-year-olds, if Jeremy Irons moved into their house, would sort of make a pass at him. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Irons.
In the end, I feel privileged to have made a movie of this extraordinary novel. I think that's the bottom line, really. I'm unbelievably happy to have done that, despite all of the nightmare that's happened.